Okay, großartig, wow. Wir haben schon vorhin ein bisschen gehört, als hier getestet wurde. Klingt ja alles sehr vielversprechend. Ich weiß nicht, ich glaube, es ist ganz gut, das auch zu testen. Ich weiß nicht, ist das schon getestet mit den Mikrofonen, die angeschlossen sind? Verstehen alle, das ist super. Hören alle, haben alle Abstand. Ich glaube, die 4 Aktivistinnen würden es wertschätzen, wenn irgendwie eine Maske getragen wird. Sie werden, glaube ich, selbst die Maske tragen, solange sie nicht sprechen. Ansonsten sind noch 2 ganz wichtige Regeln, dass wir halt hier vorne frei halten. Ich meine, wir hatten es ja heute Morgen schon, haben ja vielleicht einige auch gesehen, dass es einfach ein bisschen unkonstruktiv wurde, wenn alles voller Menschen war und man dann hatte niemand mehr gute Fotos. Und ich glaube, so wie wir jetzt sind, ist es eine ganz gute Sache, dass wir das alle hinkriegen. Großartig. Und ansonsten fast die wichtigste Regel ist wahrscheinlich, dass die Fragen vor allem auch immer an alle Aktivistinnen gestellt werden. Das ist natürlich die Versuchung hier da besonders Einzelne zu befragen, aber dafür werden nicht alle 4 hier. Und das ist auch nicht der Grund, warum sie diese Pressekonferenz machen. Der Grund ist ja eben das Treffen, was vorhin stattgefunden hat mit der Bundeskanzlerin. Davon werden sie in jedem Fall kurz berichten. Aber es geht dann relativ schnell auch in die Fragen. Wegen dem Wetter, wegen der Hitze, wir haben uns alle gerade noch Sonnencreme aufgetragen. Ich hoffe, Ihnen allen geht es auch gut und Sie überleben das ohne Probleme. Aber wir haben gedacht, wir halten es relativ kurz. Ich glaube, das kann auch gut funktionieren, weil sich auch viele Fragen wahrscheinlich auch inhaltlich decken werden. Genau, für die Fragen gibt es 2 Orte auf der rechten und der Punkt auf der linken Seite, steht er jetzt? In der Mitte? Das sind 2 solche Richtmikros, die sich schon fast verstecken könnten, aber es ist vielleicht für alle gut, die eine Frage stellen wollten, wenn sie die schon mal gesehen haben. Sozusagen, um die Corona-Richtlinien einzuhalten, müsste man dann dorthin kommen, um seine Frage zu stellen. Ich würde jetzt erstmal die Aktivistinnen vorstellen und sich vorstellen lassen, wenn sie gleich auftreten. Dann würden die kurz was sagen zu der Situation, also wahrscheinlich nur Luisa, zu dem Treffen, wie es gerade gelaufen ist, und dann wären wir bereit, einige Fragen zu nehmen. Da würde ich dann einfach nochmal fragen, ob jemand dann zu dem, was bis dahin noch nicht gesagt wurde, noch Fragen hat. Und yay, dann überstehen wir das alle. Ja. Ja, okay, ist ein gutes Anliegen. Ich glaube, es ist ein bisschen blöd wegen dem Wetter, weil wir zeitlich so begrenzt sind, dann, dass wir möglichst viel in einer Sprache hinbekommen. Und ich glaube, es ist auch für die anderen Aktivistinnen gut, wenn alle 4 auf Englisch sprechen, sodass sie sich sozusagen auch gegenseitig verstehen und dann weniger doppeln. Gibt es sonst noch Fragen? Dann können wir loslegen. Ja. Noch mehr aus dem Bild. Ich muss auch sagen, wo die sitzen. Jawohl, kommt hoch, come here. Adelaide, you can sit here next Anuna, yes, then Greta, and then Luisa, maybe. Great. So, thank you so much for all of you for coming. Thank you for keeping the distance. Thank you for wearing a mask. Luisa will now start with a short briefing, and here it's allowed to take off the mask, or you can just take it off when you speak. Okay, Luisa. And I thought everything in English, because everyone can ask.
Hi, thank you, Luis. Yes, so we had a meeting today of 90 minutes with Chancellor Merkel. We had a discussion for all of that time. We were discussing matters concerning German politics, European politics, and international politics, and in particular also trade agreements and pricing mechanisms for carbon. And I think we're now happy to take your questions.
Yes, sure. Meldet euch einfach, wenn ihr was fragen wollt, und jawohl. Da hinten, wenn Sie einmal zum rechten Standmikro gehen könnten. Und das linke wäre auch noch frei, da könnte man auch noch hingehen, um noch eine zweite Frage zu stellen.
Hier rein. Angela Ulrich from German Public Radio over here. Would you please detail a little bit about the discussion with Angela Merkel? What did you ask her? What did you want from what should she give you, and what did you get?
Anuna, maybe.
Me?
Yeah.
So we had the meeting, and we went to Angela Merkel because we wrote an open letter to all heads of states and world leaders, and we had a few demands in there. And the thing that we mostly asked for is the fact that we want leaders in this crisis, and we don't have any leaders right now that are treating the crisis like a crisis. We asked her also to communicate openly about her policies, and that if she knows that the targets that we've set now are not enough, that she communicates this, because we cannot be the only ones communicating about the urgency of the crisis when our politicians and world leaders are not, because then it's way harder to create a platform with people that can go for this. And also, more specifically, we talked about the Mercosur trade agreement, and we said it is really not okay if Europe would sign this and ratify this, because it would violate human rights in the Amazon forest. And we are also already now responsible with Europe for the destruction of the Amazon forest. And I was very happy to hear that Angela Merkel said she would not ratify the agreement as it is today.
Yeah, I mean, what it comes down to is that we asked her to treat the climate crisis like you treat any other crisis. And we told her to face the climate emergency, which was also the core message of our open letter. And what we want is leaders. We want people to step up, to dare to step out of their comfort zones, to prioritize the future ahead of the now, and to be brave enough to think long term and take people's. Take care of people, and that is what we want. We want leaders to step up and take responsibility, treat the climate crisis like a crisis.
Okay, yeah.
German press agency DPA, were you happy or were you disappointed with what Angela Merkel had to tell you? You said you were happy about the trade agreement, but in general, what's your impression?
Luisa. Yeah. I mean, does anyone else have a question at the moment? For now, I think that's it.
Yes, so we were thankful for the occasion and for the time, which was certainly quite a lengthy conversation. It became very clear that we look at the situation from different perspectives, and we made clear that what we are asking for is nothing less and nothing more than the Paris Agreement to be translated into politics. So we believe there's a bit of a misunderstanding of what we're asking for, which is not what we like or what our opinions are, but what we see needs to be done according to the science, which is where we had a longer discussion about.
We asked her to, like we said, we need leaders that are brave enough to face the actions that we actually need, even though it is hard to take those decisions. And she responded that she told us that she will take into consideration to try to be more brave.
Okay, wir wollten ja eigentlich mal 2 Fragen nehmen, es gibt jetzt immer nur eine. Jawohl, das ist die zweite, dann kannst du schon mal rübergehen und dann kannst du schon mal starten. Dankeschön.
Rosanna Pugliese, ANSA, Italian Press Agency. And Greta, I heard you that you said that we need leaders. And so my question to you is, what do you think about Angela Merkel? She's brave enough, in your opinion? And what do you think about a world in which the United States of America, a president like Joe Biden, have, and not anymore Donald Trump? It would be better for your fight against the climate change? Thank you.
Okay, and we take the second question.
Yes, thank you. Svante Martin, Frankfurt Allgemeine Zeitung. So you just said that 90 minutes is quite a long time, but now you're saying you asked her to be brave, you asked for leaders, and surely she said a little bit more than just that she would consider being brave, I hope. Can you give us a little more concrete examples of what you've talked about in those 1.5 hours?
Yeah, what I think about Angela Merkel, I think she was nice, she was very friendly, and I think that anyone could be brave enough to become that leader, and she has a huge responsibility, but also a huge opportunity to become a leader like that, and that goes for everyone. You don't have to be a prime minister or a chancellor or a president to take on that role. You can be anyone, just being on the street, using your duty as a democratic citizen to be involved, to get engaged. Anyone can become that leader. So yeah, anyone can become that leader. And
yeah, I think it's fine. We met Merkel today, not Joe Biden.
But yeah, we can have the discussion after we talk to Joe Biden then.
Yeah.
And on the question for the 90 minutes, so with the climate crisis, we are all facing a very, very complex political situation, because you have to prioritize the future over the past, and the interests of future generations have to be somewhere balanced with the interest of the generations today, and that is a huge challenge, and we're not denying that at all, and we are seeing how big this challenge is, and we are asking for a lot. We know that, yet, and that's what we discussed about. Also, how the changes that we need to come either from politics or they will come from nature, but it's only one that we can actually have a say about. So that is it's a political challenge, it's a democratic challenge, and as democratic citizens, we need to protect democracy, but we also need to equip democracies to rise up to that challenge. And and that is something that really, I think we spent quite a while talking about too.
Nice. Now we have 2 questions, and I would take 2 more. There's already someone rounded up here. Maybe we can, if you can go to the right microphone, and I think we need to close then. Okay.
Hello, Leo Ginsburg from the newspaper Bild. My question is, Konstantin Nimmerfroh of Fridays for Future Frankfurt criticized that Fridays for Future groups had been informed about the meeting only a few days before, and he told that the letter you wrote to the head of states also has not been coordinated with the Fridays for Future groups. They feel overrun. What do you say to these accusations?
Okay, und die zweite Frage ist noch da.
Yeah. Christopher Wittig, RTL and NTV. I have 2 questions. Do you know why you get your appointment, especially today? And one question to Greta, please. Can you say something to the meeting and to the maybe the special day today? Is it a special day for you? And that's it.
Today marks the it is exactly 2 years ago since the first school strike for climate took place, so I guess we celebrate 2-year anniversary, but we aren't the kind of people who spend time to celebrate, so I guess it's an important date. And as far as Fridays for Future, we have never said that we represent Fridays for Future. We do not speak on behalf of Fridays for Future. Fridays for Future is a grassroots movement made up of individuals. It is not an organization with representatives. But and we didn't. The letter wasn't written as Fridays for Future, but as individual climate activists. So to make that clear, that it is not communicated as if we represent Fridays for Future. Yeah, I think it's we are constantly evolving as a movement, the way we organize ourselves. I talked to Konstantin on the phone last week, so I'm sure we find ways around that. I don't need to do that here.
Okay, dann haben wir die 2 letzten Fragen noch und ja, mögen Sie beginnen?
Hi, this is Julie from ARD, Public Broadcaster. I just want to come back again to Angela Merkel. Was she in any way a little bit more specific about the Paris Agreement? And also, we have the presidency of the Council of the European Union at the moment. Did she say anything about any detailed plan or any commitment for the next few months?
Yes, so of course that was also why it is an important moment to meet her today and during those 6 months of the presidency, because Germany has a huge responsibility, not only because it is a developed country that has itself a responsibility, but also because they are now the leader at the council, and we want to make sure that she brings those targets higher up. That's what we also we ask her to go further, of course, because right now the targets where they are not reaching the Paris Agreement. And so we ask her also concretely, how can you make that happen? And
I mean, as a physicist, she reaffirmed that she does understand the science and that it's no excuse that she doesn't understand the science behind the climate crisis. And as a politician, she well understands the political complexity behind that struggle. And the question now is how to fill that gap, because we are dimensions away from where we should be according to Paris. So she seemed to be aware of the challenge ahead, and she at least confirmed that she is willing to get stuff done during the presidency. Yet eventually, by the end of the day, it's about carbon budgets, it's about very clear targets, and it's about it's about numbers and figures, and for that we need action and more than really nice and big words.
Thank you so much.
I mean, right now we're kind of stuck in a loop. I mean, as long as the climate crisis is not being treated as a crisis, we won't be able to achieve sufficient changes, of course. And it's like these 4 main players, like government and people, media and business, and everyone is blaming each other. And it's like we're stuck in a squirrel wheel, or there's hamster wheel in English. And everyone is blaming each other. And unless that cycle, that vicious cycle can be broken, unless anyone breaks that cycle, we won't be able to get anywhere. And that's, and everyone has a responsibility. And I tell you, especially as media here, you also have a huge responsibility in communicating this crisis, treating this crisis as a crisis. It should not be only up to us children and scientists to communicate the urgency of the climate crisis. So someone needs to break that cycle, and that could be anyone. Everyone has a responsibility. But of course, the bigger your platform, the bigger your moral duty, and the bigger your carbon footprint, also the bigger your moral duty and responsibility. And everyone has different opportunities. Everyone are in different situations and can act in different ways. But everyone can act in one way or another. So yeah.
But maybe to add up, everyone has a responsibility, but everyone does not have the same responsibility. So as Europeans, we are privileged. We are not facing the biggest consequences of climate change yet, but people are already dying today, already facing the consequences today. And our responsibility, and mainly our historical responsibility, is huge. And that is why Europe not only has to be the leader, but has to go way faster than where we are today. And what we bring up as a message here is not what we think or, oh, what should we ask her, but it's concrete facts that come from experts. And we only try to break this huge space between what we keep on hearing from experts and what we see actually happening. Is just the gap is so big. And so we hope we can fulfill this gap and work together forward, but for that we have to understand what's actually the situation. And that's where everyone is responsible.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we often say that we are all in the same boat after all. And yes, that is true. Everyone will be affected by, but on that boat, some are traveling business class, so to speak, and we need to take that into account, and we also need to look at the historical emissions. And speaking of responsibility, and yeah.
Thank you so much. I think it's getting really hot. More questions? Okay.
Bernhard Petter with the newspaper Die Tageszeitung. I'm referring to the open letter that you sent and then you also brought today to Merkel. In this letter you give very specific topics. You're talking about a halt of all fossil investment, about ending fossil fuels, subsidies, a carbon budget. Did you address this with Angela Merkel, and did she say anything on these issues? And the next question would be, in this letter also you say that we need a new system to overcome the climate crisis. Could you elaborate on that, and did Merkel agree that we need a new system? Thanks.
Yes, we had some specific demands in the letter, some specific non-political demands. That would be the very minimum of what needs to be done to stay below 1.5 degrees of global temperature rise and stick to the Paris Agreement. We discussed some demands, but it's complicated, and we discussed the goal of net zero 2050 for the EU, which of course would not be consistent with the Paris Agreement, and we discussed a bit about the upcoming impact assessment report for the EU's emission targets. And to clarify, when we say that we need a new system, we mean that if you look at the planned production of fossil fuels, the world is planning to produce until the year 2030, according to the UN's emissions gap report, is 120% more than what would be consistent with the 1.5 degree target. So you see that it doesn't really add up. So if we are to stay below that target, we are going to have to make it possible to abandon valid contracts and deals. And that is not possible within today's system, and that is a proof, black on white, that we need a new system in order to achieve these targets, to stay below these safety limits. And just as simple as that, if you just add up the numbers.
We need a system that takes into account that we have a planet that has limited resources. And we are a bit scared that today this is not taken into account.
Okay, and we have one more question over there.
Thank you. My name is Ralf Bollmann from Frankfurter Allgemeine on Sunday. You said that you understand that the situation became more complicated for politicians because of corona crisis. My question is if you have changed your strategy, your approach because of the crisis. Is there anything which is different now than before for your movement? Thank you.
Well, as for everyone, many things are different. We are people too, so we do experience a deadly virus everywhere, so that's obvious. Then we are a movement who, used to strike as in masses on the streets, which was for many weeks not thinkable during Corona, and is still a very challenging task. Yet there were also similarities. We are a movement that always said unite behind the science and fight every crisis, and that's what we did as a movement too during Corona. So we took the Corona pandemic and we're still taking it as seriously as we should. We are listening to the science and we are adjusting. So we are moving to spaces where we can strike safely, sometimes digitally, sometimes in different, like in smaller numbers on the streets. And yet we're seeing that compared to the Corona pandemic, the climate crisis is really, not being taken nearly as seriously. And Corona has, once again demonstrated what it looks like when you decide to take a crisis seriously. And we're taking it from there on and really, taking that into account when we ask the climate crisis to be treated as a crisis. Hence, we have decided to strike again globally, safely if possible on the streets, or digitally if in places where we can't be on the streets. So we're mobilizing right now for September 25th. And that was a really challenging decision to make because we see how difficult it is today to organize a global action day when people certainly face different struggles all around the world. Though the climate crisis hasn't slowed down, it's escalating, and wherever you look, we're seeing people suffering from it. So obviously, we need people to demand action, and this is obviously what we keep doing. And
I think also that COVID, also proves what politicians can do, because for 2 years we've heard that we cannot take drastic measures and there is no platform and there is no money, but apparently there is. And there is a lot of people who will do extreme things if you just inform them and if you let scientists talk, for example, with what happened with COVID. And also, post-COVID is like a huge opportunity to take things differently. Our economy kind of collapsed, and we also talked to Merkel actually about the fact that the European Union is now releasing 2,000 billion euros of state aid, but we are still investing it in an economy that inherently fuels the climate crisis. So instead of investing in a sustainable future, we're still investing money in a future that I myself don't even want to live in. So these are also important things to take into account when we think about Corona.
And we have one more question over there.
Hello, I'm Susanne Ehlerding. I'm with Tagesspiegel here in Berlin. This is a follow-up on what Luisa Nova said earlier on the balance between generations. And I'm wondering, there's so many more people who are over 60 years old here in this country and voters and there are so much more fewer people who are young like you are. And do you see the danger that this conflict of interests cannot be overcome and that we go on business as usual for too long? Is this one thing that you fear or danger that you see? Thank you.
Well, it could be a danger, surely, yet maybe Fridays for Future is the proof how to overcome it, because you can ignore melting glaciers and you can ignore hurricanes happening on the other side of the world, but you can hardly ignore your own children asking you to change your ways. And hence, bridging that gap between generations and turning towards your parents, grandparents, people close to you, has turned out, as we see it, to be a one way forward. To emphasize when we know we have for once to act for the future, which we are, and to prevent crises instead of reacting to it only, which is obviously a new way to go, but what we need to do in times of the climate crisis.
I think that's it. We have a solid half an hour. Maybe you want to have some closing statements. Maybe we want to announce the next global strike. For me, I want to thank Haus der Kulturen der Welt for hosting us. And we are really happy to be in this place, which feels really suitable. And they've also recently started a campaign on, well, a topic closely related to ours. I don't know how in English, yeah. Okay. Maybe you want to say something about the future. Like the next strike, I think we should promote it.
So as Emma said, the next day of climate action, as we call it, is coming up on September 25th. We are mobilizing everywhere, but it's very difficult in different regions around the world. So depending on what the corona pandemic allows, we will strike online or offline. In Germany, for the German press, we are planning several hundred strikes on the streets, very safely corona-conform. And besides, I think that's it for us now, right? Okay.
Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for answering the questions related to the meeting with Merkel. And bye. Thank you, everyone. Maybe you still have like some technical questions. I will stay here and we can clarify them. And that's it. Thank you so much.